Let's get started.
All right, welcome back to Humans in the Loop, where we talk about the AI stories worth talking about and figure out where humans belong with this crazy AI journey that we have right now. Galina, you are in Chicago.
I am in Chicago for the first time for the NAMIC conference, which is a mutual insurance conference. I had that happiness. And then at the conference, it's just talking to people about AI is an uphill battle. We talk about AI all day and we feel like we're falling behind sometimes. And then we step out of our bubble and we realize that there are people that haven't even used ChatGPT yet.
You want to share more about what NAMIC conference was about, just for context for everyone?
Yeah, so it had a lot of underwriters in there. There were sessions,
Insurance.
a lot of talks. So underwriters within insurance that go to see what's happening in the industry to learn. There were AI talks. There was an AI agent talk, but then there was, for example, how do you insure humanoid robots? Because this is something that's new on the market. So how that gets insured, also weather events and how weather events are impacting insurance and other factors along legal and compliance impacting insurance. So it's really for them to come and get like the industry download that they need to know. And of course, meet each other, talk to each other, share information, have a few drinks, all the joys of attending a conference outside your home.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, going to those kind of conference kind of reminds you, we think that there's new technology and there's new trend. You're like getting started on a fresh canvas, but the reality is you live with the legacy. The insurance existed before internet ever. So
Yes.
how do we bring the new technology, bring the new way of advancing your business on top of what's been built as core business function and core business utilities that you already established? So that's also why we have called our episode today as Can AI Rewrite the Past? So we're not actually erasing the past, ignore the past. We have to figure out how do we reconcile what we have built in the past and what we want to build for the future. And does that involve the rewriting or translation of the past into the future? So that said, Galina, this week I went into a deep, deep rabbit hole of mainframe.
Which was so
I,
random.
I'm gonna be the mainframe girl for a while. I think that my intellectual curiosity is just like about to, like it just opened up. So I'm gonna talk about it for a while because the stats are fascinating. So I want to do some trivia question yet again with you today and tie it back to the story that I wanted to share between Anthropic and IBM happened last week. But to start with the trivia, every time you go to a cafe and then pay for the coffee, and then there's, the credit card transaction that you're using.
Yes.
What percentage of all credit card transactions globally run on mainframe computers?
I would give it maybe like a 20%.
It's over 90%. Financial services, insurance industry all existed before internet existed, before cloud ever existed. They figured out a way to build this on mainframe. I'm just thinking if anyone who, watched this show by coincidence and then like they came from, 1980s, 1990s and like us like saying 90%, I think they're going to laugh out. It is so guaranteed that mainframe is the dominant player for all financial services, insurance, the basic functionalities that we're seeing right now in the world that connects the like monetary transactions are all wired in mainframe.
I am shocked. And you know why? Because Stripe has been in headlines for such a long time as the revolutionary payment processor. Like they process billions in transactions and they have the world's biggest companies as customers. Everybody's pushing for them to IPO because they've just exploded in success. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, payment processing has upgraded and we're good to go. So the fact that is Stripe processing payments on mainframes is my question.
So that's actually a really good question. And I did went into that rabbit hole as well.
Oh,
so yeah, aside from Stripe, so basically just when the cloud business came to life, it never replaced what mainframe offered. It was a new industry, new way of transacting. E-commerce is the big one. When internet took off, all these distributed transactions that is not like one giant bank transacting like millions of records per day. Now this is involving like hundreds of thousands of vendors moving money back and forth. It's a completely different scale and the level of consolidation that is needed for processing those data. Mainframe was essentially for more legacy established businesses. We meet them all the time. They process at the very least like 50,000 documents per day just for a line of business. Versus Stripe is millions of vendors sending maybe $100, $1,000. That one, Stripe kind of transaction, cloud is great. But for the regulated industry where you need just one consolidated transaction that happens overnight in batch, mainframe is by far the more economic solution. And that's why over 90% of the transactions still stay in the mainframe. And after going through the rabbit hole, I'm convinced that it's going to stay there. So that takes me to the next question. Given the time, I will actually give you more hint so you can get to the second question better.
Okay.
So I said 90% of all credit card transactions are on a mainframe. About 70%, 68% of the global IT workloads are running on mainframe. So what share of global IT that mainframe cost? If the 68% of the global IT workloads run on mainframe, what do you think that its cost of running on mainframe represent within that global IT cost?
$10?
You're picking it up 6%.
Oh.
Granted,
Okay.
this is IBM's numbers. So, it's a vendor provided number. So you have to kind of see with the grain of salt. But so 68% of the workloads, but 6% of the cost. And again, this is why it's such a cost efficient at high transaction volumes, because the capital, the installing the mainframe has already been paid off decades ago. There is no operating cost here versus the like running on cloud. So that's why the cost element is such a big deal. And if you know that it's like a fraction of the cost on running somewhere else, there's really no reason for enterprises to move away, like move the data from mainframe to another.
You would
How
think that the hyperscalers like AWS, GCP, Azure, I believed that a big part of their growth was that the reason was because they were the cost of migrating from mainframe to cloud. So it would become cost effective for enterprises.
So it depends on, right? So again, mainframe is excellent if you're doing high volume transactions. But again, if you're using the cloud, really the core benefit is the flexibility. You can turn up and down, you can have a distributed system, you can have a spare capacity that is standby and only kick things off when you have a peak demand. So that flexibility is where using cloud makes much more sense and perhaps more cost efficient than buying two GPUs to run this document processing solution when you know that you only require like 20,000 documents per month. We already have this conversation with customers all the time. So, it again depends on the use cases. It makes sense to keep it on the mainframe, but also tap into the cloud for more advanced use cases. What I wanted to really say is we often have this misnomer where we think that if the data sits on mainframe, you can't do AI adoption. Basically, the digital transformation is the prerequisite of the AI adoption. But that is not necessarily the case because most of the insurance carriers that we meet or other enterprises we encounter, they have the data on mainframe, but they do have the element that connects the mainframe to their cloud environment. So when the new documents comes in, they have a document processing layer, which Upstage provides, that converts the unstructured data into structured and then push it to mainframe. So the AI adoption actually happens almost like there's a foundation of mainframe, and then there is a layer that translate between the what's in the mainframe, which is structured data, to all the unstructured data that comes from the multiple sources to advance your analytics. So there is always a way to adopt AI as long as we understand the use cases and do it economically. You don't have to move the data around all the time.
So I guess that makes sense. I mean, we have heard that a lot of enterprises do have a hybrid approach specifically for this reason. It's like they can't necessarily get rid of the foundation of their business, the building blocks, but they do want to unlock. And data analytics, everybody's been selling data analytics way before Gen AI too. So that had to be unlocked. It's almost as if it went from this like mainframe to hybrid approach to unlock data analytics. And because of this step in between, the pipeline is there to enable now like Gen AI applications and products.
Exactly. So I'm going to continue digging into this mainframe story just a little bit more because I do want to introduce our first case study that we wanted to cover today, which is Anthropic's another one article that just disrupt the existing industry. All
Yes.
right.
Am I sharing or are you sharing?
Actually, I'll share. Give me one moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so today's story is basically Anthropic published a piece of article like a week ago where it claims that the Claude code can modernize the COBOL, the COBOL. I actually didn't know what this was, but I did a little bit of research, and this is actually a decade-old like programming language that powers most of the mainframe systems. So this is essentially the code language that runs the mainframe that we just talked about. And the Claude, using the Claude code, you can essentially translate this COBOL language to whether that's a Python, Java, that basically needs to be translated into the cloud native programs. Because of this article, IBM lost 30 billion in market cap in a day, which is like mind blowing. So I got into the rabbit hole of like what's going on here. And basically, the article's claim here is that translating this COBOL programming language has been the main cost center and main barrier for the modernization. And there are a number of reasons. First is the language is very old, legacy system. There's not much talent there who's actually able to handle this modernization process. So the quick stat that I found really interesting is average age of engineers who are proficient with the COBOL language is over 58.
They're aging
Yeah.
out. They're about to retire. They're about to leave and tell everyone good luck. You know, the fancy Python and JavaScript and TypeScript languages, you know, good
Yes.
luck. Something breaks. I don't know.
And, and this is existential. Like this is very similar to the underwriter story that we hear in the insurance industry where it's working, it's reliable. However, the new generation is not entering into the space because, we all know that if I learn this today, will I have a job 10 years later, 20 years later? If the answer is no, even if it's such a stable, thing to learn and, run today, it's not applicable for the future. And I think we're seeing the very similar thing in this mainframe space as well. To go back to my earlier point where how stable and cost efficient mainframe is, the talent gap is going to be the major challenge for maintaining the system.
I don't know how they're going to solve this. I mean, if Claude can genuinely translate the code, but you still need those experts to validate. I mean, we see code generation as the number one use case, but you still have to know the code yourself and catch any mistakes because the generation isn't perfect itself. So it's kind of like in the last few years before these COBOL developers retire, they have to go through this process where, yes, leverage AI to translate. And I saw into Java, there's multiple steps here. And then to take a look at it and validate it and make sure that it works. And this is a multi-year process.
Right. And that's exactly why this article was really surprising to the IBM investors or to the industry, because if we can crack this nut using AI, the modernization in theory should be a lot easier and a lot less dependency into the individuals who can do this, who are retiring and aging out. But the reality here is that, like you also said, it's not just about the code translation, it's about back testing, making sure that all the numbers tied out when we change from one database to another. We already have that issues everywhere, even when we move from one Excel sheet to another. So think about moving it from physical hardware to the cloud, and then making sure that million transactions add up to the same 2 decimal points. So that's kind of the testing validation phase that will take a lot more time for AI to actually step in and replace the consulting and the SI business are doing to lead this modernization efforts. So I think that if I would say, right now, can AI just expedite and supercharge the modernization all at one go? No. But I do believe that if those engineers who are extremely experienced, have all the know-hows before they retire, if we can get that knowledge transfer and then train the AI with those information, I do think that there's this really big business opportunity here to use AI to support this modernization. It is inevitable that it's going to happen one way or another in the future. And if we can actually crack this nuts using AI, I do believe that this will be a very big business opportunity.
It does sound like it. My follow-up question is, if everybody migrates off of COBOL, what is IBM's next big business?
You don't have to worry about it. IBM is all over the quantum computing.
Oh, okay. Because I know they've been pushing
Yeah.
Watson for a while and it just has not lifted off the ground, no matter how hard they push or how much money they spend. And I see them at some of these insurance events. IBM has a big presence. I mean, their booths are huge. They sponsor like all the happy hours. So they're spending money to get out there. But again, when we talk to end customers, they're not. It's just IBM mainframe. Logically, you would think, why would we go after OpenAI and Anthropic, the new kids on the block, when IBM, which has the mainframe that we use, is allowing us to do AI through Watson? So you would think that Watson adoption would have been much higher because of that, but that's just not the case.
I don't think that at this point this is a technology question, to be honest. It's really more about, like, do you have the sense of urgency to change? And what the reality is that because of the stability that mainframe offers, there's really no strong incentives to get out and then adopt new technology. So it's
Mm,
a chicken and the egg problem. I think everything is there. There's a reason why we call this a legacy, because legacies are also a comfortable state.
yes,
Yeah.
it is comfortable. Like my
Hmm.
Saturday nights at home on the couch watching Netflix.
Exactly. You don't want to replace that, even though you know there's a better thing to do. Yeah. Yeah. All
Okay,
right.
awesome. So
Mhm.
move on to other case studies. Marriott, the hotel chain, and Hallmark, the greeting card company, in case all of you did not know that to begin with. So let's start with Marriott. Marriott is a very interesting case for AI adoption. And I'm going to allude to what we covered last week too on their Q4 earnings as well. So Marriott did have like most of the AI use cases off the bat, it's like customer service and customer face, like all customer facing. They created this AI concierge. So when you check in, which is what I did here in Chicago, it was late. I was hungry. I asked the front desk, I just landed. I want food. What's good in Chicago around here? And so Marriott decided that instead of taking up the concierges or the associates' time, they should have a chatbot to make recommendations for people like me. So there was a case where a traveler in Charleston wanted an Italian restaurant with bar seating for a quick dinner. And the chatbot, in all its knowledge and wisdom, said, ask the hotel concierge data. It like defeats the purpose of having an AI assistant for efficiency or like in these customer relations. Fail. Very big fail. And it also comes down to the fact that, like, when you build these AI products, the underlying data really matters. I don't know if there were any local guides uploaded, both for restaurants and things to do with like Yelp and Google reviews in there to provide the answer. Uh, But apparently, it was too much of a complicated question, and the assistant couldn't do it. With that said, remember when we were talking about like Q4 earnings calls and really not many companies were saying that they had ROI from AI, and they were saying like, yes, AI is the future, but they weren't really like saying, and we did AI and here's all the amazing things because of it. So in the Q4 earnings call, the CEO of Marriott said like, oh, it's kind of still early. He used the analogy of pulling into the player's parking lot and we're not even in uniform on the field. We're still testing. It's happening. Meantime, in 2024 alone, they spent 1.2 billion on AI. So
Wow.
how are you like not in uniform on the field and like in the parking lot while spending this amount of money just for AI? And it is coming down again of like, if you are spending this amount of money already on AI, like what is broken in the process of, I think it's the frameworks and how do you adopt AI? Where do you apply it? Part of that 1.2 billion was spent on this Ren AI chatbot that couldn't figure out an Italian restaurant in Charlotte. So or Charleston. So there's I understand again experimentation and something doesn't work out, but if you're spending 1.2 billion, what is the ROI cost on the payback period? Like we spent 1.2 billion, but we were able to make 2 billion or because we applied it in the right places. But I don't want to harp on them too much because again, they went from like a more personalized approach to then applying it on the back end side of things. And this is where AI is like, again, the absolute most powerful. This is where it goes from like impressive headline worthy AI, such as a, local guide assistant to something called invisible AI. When you implement AI in core operations such as reservation, property management, loyalty systems, then it's not this flashy AI project, but guess what? It actually has a really big impact. When you replace plumbing underneath a lot of these reservation systems, property management, like the back end local inventory, the back end side of things, then you can start to see some pretty amazing results in ROI. There was a really good visual on this article was talking about how Hilton is doing a lot of these guest facing AI, which is the chatbot, the concierge, voice assistants, like brand perception. But when you go to back office AI, such as dynamic pricing, revenue management, process automations, this is revenue per available room improvement. So you can do a lot of neat things leveraging also machine learning. Like not everything needs to be generative AI, which by the way, machine learning is the field. Then you have artificial intelligence, and then you have generative intelligence underneath that. So you can use a combination of machine learning, of generative AI to apply in a lot of these, again, like unsexy, hidden, invisible AI places. So the story here is like, don't just bolt on AI, just really think about how you can build it into your core operations. Another really cool thing is they have direct booking integration with Google AI mode because Google has done a phenomenal job of launching AI through all of their systems. And with that, If Marriott, which is they're doing, can get into Google AI searchability, then people don't book through Expedia or booking.com, which take a commission as part of the booking rate. So this is again, it is the revenue per available room that they're really optimizing. And with their 271 million members, I mean, they're set to make much more rather than having an AI like with the 1.2 billion spent on a dinner question. They're focused on the infrastructure. Like, where is the real work happening here?
That's fascinating. It's almost like everyone started with the chatbot and then actually like, oh, interesting. The actual use cases where we see the ROI is on the back end. Let's go back and dig up like what we can actually improve before we bring it out to the customer or external parties for chatbot experience.
Exactly. And then one more case that I have is Hallmark. Everybody knows Hallmark greeting cards. And one of the things that people started to do was create songs and lyrics and storybooks for their kids. It is a lot of that just content generation. And you would think that with AI that a lot of people are using it to generate their own poems, their own sweet messages that they could just text with like texting and WhatsApp and all of this stuff, why do you even need a card at the end of the day? What's the whole point? Especially with AI, you don't have to be creative. You can ask the AI to be creative for you. Bam, send off a nice sweet text like happy birthday, happy anniversary, happy Mother's Day. And yet Hallmark still moves 6 billion cards a year. And the one thing that I really love about this story is Hallmark decided not to use AI to start generating the copy for their cards because they still value that human in the loop. This is a story where they use AI to power the human level experience of like receiving the card, opening it up, reading the message, reading the handwritten note. And what they really focus on is AI should remove the friction and not necessarily add friction to their processes. Instead, they pointed AI towards supply chain, inventory, and their workflows. One of the things that they did over here, they used machine learning to protect the human core of the product rather than replace it. So they had something called sign and send, where if you do have an idea of a card that you want, you can handwrite it and then take a picture of it. What they do is they take your content, your human content, and then they generate a card for you and send it to you. So now you can have your
Oh,
own
wow.
custom card.
That is lovely. It's like a build a bear kind of experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and it's using machine learning, computer vision, and they had, like, a video greeting card idea that didn't work out either, so it was a much better product fit in the market. They also had recipient graph tracking relationships for recommendations. So if you have a Hallmark account and you are buying cards, like I am a sister, I am a daughter. So I'm buying cards for different occasions for different people. They track the relationship. So if I'm looking for a card for my mom, it's not sending me like a Valentine's Day card or like a happy anniversary recommendation. And we are all familiar with recommendation engines. This has been powering Google search results for such a long time. So this is AI has been at work and now it's leveraging more AI and generative AI to make better recommendations for you. And then lastly, they use AI for demand deviations. Like if they see an uptick in red style cards, they are using AI to go look through historical data and make sure that they don't overproduce. Because if all of a sudden people are buying red cards, again, that impacts the number of cards the store orders, the paper printers, the number that they need to print. So it goes down the supply chain, everybody ordering more because all of a sudden there's an uptick. But there's something called the bullwhip effect where it's like, it's almost like a false signal. It's just a little uptick. And now Hallmark can prevent loss from over ordering down the supply chain by applying AI. The most beautiful part is artists because we know artists like the writers, the illustrators, photographers, animators for Hallmark cards, they art it like AI and art has been such a tenuous relationship because all the artists are saying, okay, now you can generate images yourself, slap it on wherever you want. We don't need any more artists. But again, Hallmark keeps things human in the loop, where they explicitly require human artists to finish AI generated assets because we know that AI generate assets are not good. Post to say, hey, we're at NAMIC using Brian to, go meet Brian at NAMIC. They generated an AI image of him, two AI images of him. I actually didn't notice the second image, which we ended up posting, gave him an extra thumb. And then the first image made his teeth really weird. And Brian told me, he's like, I have an extra thumb. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't catch that. So AI generated stuff is not perfect. And so these humans go and do the finished assets. They remove the extra fingers. They clean it up so it genuinely looks good. Same thing for the writing. Again, AI just repurposes what is out in the world. AI is not inherently human. So it does miss some of the emotional triggers that make a card make you feel all warm inside. And you still, at the end of the day, need a human to do that. Because AI, again, it's good for maybe generating the mood board, generating the first renditions of the copy, but you need that human finishing touch in order to make it land. That is the beautiful Hallmark story that I have of them using AI in the backend operations to enhance card making because it's such a popular business.
It's almost like, I hear two themes that kind of like go across everything that we discussed today. AI can do unsexy things incredibly well that empowers humans to improve our own experience or the system experience.
Yes, exactly. It is all meant to empower. And a big pun that we make in our show, Humans in the Loop, is because you still do need
Exactly.
humans in the loop. At the conference this week, I heard over and over with the insurance folks that when they use AI, trust but verify. So they
And the
still want to
verify.
be part of the
Yeah,
process.
100%, because verify here is not always, there's not always a objective truth to it, right? So it's a
Yep.
human judgment that makes, hey, this aligns with our company value, our company policy, and that is just inherently human decision.
But you can do it faster. So now, if a creative director get for Hallmark can go through multiple card iterations and save 25% of their time, what does that unlock for Hallmark when it comes to generating more cards or reallocating that talent into new product lines? And by the way, in that story, they made a very big infrastructure change to AWS. And so the amount of money they save from AWS, they have reallocated into their AI R&D department. And that is a beautiful flywheel of when you can make sound technical decisions and down the line, I know that they are going to come up with new product lines like that sign and send, which is really cool. What else can you do when you actually prioritize the R&D and pushing your company into the future of new product lines in something like a greeting card business?
That's exactly how the flywheel should work, yes.
Yes, I love these stories. I love sharing them, and even myself reading about them, thinking why isn't this all over AI Twitter? Why don't I see this on LinkedIn? Why is this not in the headlines? Why are these headlines not coming across everybody's desk? It's really such a shame.
That's why we are here.
I know.
Anything else that you want to add for
All
today? So this is what we've got for you. I would love to hear any questions, feedback. We would love to read all of them and use that for our next episode. So please drop your questions in the comments, reach out to us, and love to continue on this with you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.